Hey everybody, it's Jimmy and Bill. So today's video is 10 things you really need to know about the buying process. If anything, if you're considering buying now or in the future, watch this video because there's great tips, especially even towards the end of the video. So watch the whole video. And if you like these kind of videos, do me a favor, subscribe. It takes less than a second. Give it a thumbs up. It really helps out the channel and it's greatly appreciated. And comment, and I reply to most of the comments. So let's get started. One of the first things, basically, if you're looking to buy a house, is finding the right realtor and interview realtors. They're not all the same. Yeah, I'm not a realtor, but I deal with a lot of realtors, and there's good realtors and there's bad realtors. So Bill, give us some idea what they should ask a realtor, since you are a realtor.
Sure. So every realtor is going to say, hey, I'm going to work the hardest for you. I'm going to put you on a property search so that they send you, the properties every morning or instantly, whatever you choose, that meet your basic criteria. And then they're going to schedule appointments and show you the houses. That's the bare bones basics. That's what realtors do. That's our basic job. But you should be asking the realtor, communication time. What's the best way to communicate? They should be asking you that question.
They should be full-time. I'm not a big believer in part-time realtors, but I know, don't slam me for that one, but it's just my opinion. I'm not a big believer in part-time home inspectors either. So, well, let's go ahead.
Well, and that kind of goes to one of my points is, since you got it up there, like, make sure that they do this job full-time. Could you imagine trying to look at a house, or you're in the middle of negotiating a deal and the title company needs something the day before close or a couple days before close, and you can't get a hold of your realtor because they're at their Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job and they handle things when business offices are closed?
Yeah, that would be horrible.
Like
on the biggest purchase of your life.
On the biggest purchase of your life. So make sure that they're a full-time realtor. That doesn't mean that a realtor can't have, maybe a side gig a little bit here and there, but I'm saying make sure that they are a full-time real estate professional. So when are they going to communicate to you? And just ask them. If they're not asking you questions, it's more about them asking you questions, I think, than you asking the real estate agent questions. Are they gonna, what's the negotiation strategy? When are we gonna go look at houses? Helping you through the finance stuff. They're not financial advisors, they're not lenders, but real estate agents should understand the basics and the flow of how the loan process goes and how the home buying experience is gonna go, in a nutshell.
Yeah, and just because everybody has a cousin, a sister, a brother, or a friend of a friend that's a realtor, that's not a criteria. That's not something you should base your decision on. You should, you should interview, especially with the, things changing a little bit. So say you're doing a buyer broker. Bill, explain what a buyer broker is, and explain that if you're paying for a realtor to find you a home, you really have to be picky. Go for it.
Right, so you've got an agent that represents the listing, which is the seller, and you have an agent that represents you, the consumer, as a buyer. The agent that's representing the listing can also represent you as the buyer without a problem. There's some paperwork we fill out and you're good to go there. Just remember that the agent that's representing the listing is contractually bound to the listing to represent them. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so if you're signing a buyer broker agreement for somebody, you're kind of tied to that person for the length of that agreement, or I think the homes that they showed already.
Correct. So if you talking about the buyer broker agreement,
yeah,
agents will ask you to sign for this, myself included. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily something that I think you should fill out on the very first transaction. I know there's some different opinions, as I go and show you a house, then I expect now that, you're locked into me. Mm-hmm. But the nuts and bolts of that is, it's an agreement that says, hey, this is who's paying for the buyer representation. This is what you're looking for. And you're right, there's some portion of that that kind of ties you to, if I showed you the house, that's called procuring cause. But just because I showed you one property doesn't necessarily mean that you have procuring cause. Just, you could have come back to that house 6 months down the road. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're my client. And I haven't spoken to you other than a generic drip. So there's more that goes into that, a little, legality wise.
So at the end of the day,
yeah,
we don't want to drag that one on too much, but
there's so much involved.
But it's more as do your research in finding a realtor.
Don't be afraid of those. Look at the details though. That's my biggest out of that. Don't be afraid of them. It does show professionalism. Just don't be afraid. Just pay attention to, the money amounts.
Yeah. Bill, what's another one?
So it pays to be patient sometimes.
Yeah.
It depends on your motivation. Now, if you've got no house to go to, then you might be a little more motivated to start looking at properties. But sometimes patience wins out. Not to a point though that you're stagnant. You don't want to be, too picky either.
Right.
But patience is good, and doing your research on a property is important. That's what I mean by don't be, impatient.
Yeah, there's no rush. Right. If you're not in a rush, or if you're in a rental and stuff, and say your lease is ending, ask them if you go month to month. Don't feel like you're under the gun to buy something.
Right, exactly. That's the last thing that you want to do, is feel that way. And to be quite frank, your agent should be asking you those questions. They should be sitting down and having a consultation with you and discussing your motivations. Are you renting right now? When's your lease up? If we don't get you closed by the end of your lease, what are your options? Those are all things that a real estate professional is going to do. Perfect.
All right. Let's go on to number 3. Basically, not homes are all equal. Okay, so basically, if you went into a home and you think it's the perfect home, it may not be. Gather all the facts first about the house. The condition of the house, have an inspection done, everything, the neighborhood, how far it is from your work, what is the insurance going to be, what are the taxes going to be, because you might just fall in love with the kitchen but not think of every other thing about this house. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, I agree. When you're touring properties, some things you can change, some things you can't. How's the footprint? But all that stuff comes into play.
HOA.
Yeah. The rules and regulations. Does the neighborhood fit your needs? All that stuff is very, very important.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the next one. One of the biggest things that people don't realize is their credit. Because you have to get a mortgage. Most people don't have cash to buy a house.
Right.
So don't go out and buy a freaking car or a boat, or do something else, skip that payment today. Talk about that a little bit.
Right. And don't without speaking to a lender, don't just go, I'm going to pay off my credit cards first because I want to make sure I get a better rate when I go to get a mortgage. That might be detrimental.
Yeah, because it's revolving credit and you don't have cash.
Right.
Because they know you could charge it right back up.
Exactly. So, just talk to somebody before you jump. Again, back to kind of maybe patience a little bit, and speaking with a real estate professional that will guide you through these things. Make sure you speak to a reputable lender that will sit down with you and devise your plan in conjunction with that real estate professional.
Yeah, so basically consider the financing part. You have to be prepared for that months before you buy. It's not like you're in high debt and I'll deal with it later. If you're buying, the car payment's going to knock you out of whack, so you can't afford a house.
Right.
Even if you buy the car now, you're still going to have that payment probably 2 or 3 years from now, unless you get rid of the car.
Right.
So maybe you need to get rid of the car and buy something smaller. So take that into consideration. Okay, your finances, your mortgage, your credit, all that stuff. Let's go on to the next one. If you're serious about buying a house, get pre-approved. Don't waste your time. Don't waste the realtor time. Don't waste the seller's time. I'm being straightforward with everybody. Get pre-approved. It shows that you're serious about buying a house. And you also know what your budget's going to be. Let's talk about that one.
Right. So you got to get pre-approved. Most sellers won't entertain your contract. Well, they'll accept your contract. They're not necessarily going to entertain your contract until you have that approval. Think about it. Why would somebody want to take a property off the market while you go through the pre-approval process only to find out that you can't buy the house? So having that pre-approval letter shows that you have a much better chance of closing on the property, and that's extremely important.
So yeah, so everybody, if you're thinking about buying a house, get pre-approved. End of story. There's nothing
earth-shattering.
There's no gray about it. Just get pre-approved and know what you could afford and what you can't afford. And if you don't qualify now, you can figure out what you need to do in order to qualify in the future.
Exactly. And you did say something else there, affordability. So everybody just makes an assumption of how much they want. I had a client consultation the other day. Same thing. Well, I only want to spend about $400,000, but I don't want my mortgage to be over $1,800. So it's like, okay, well, how much are you putting down? I don't know. You know, what's your interest rate? I have no idea. So all those things come into play. Are you going to buy points down? They didn't know the answers to those questions. So we connected them with one of my lenders that I prefer to use, and we actually did a full consultation, came up with a plan, how much they could actually afford every month, or how much they wanted to afford every month. Just because you can afford it doesn't mean you need to spend it.
Absolutely.
And there's so many more factors involved in that monthly payment.
So go get pre-approved.
Yep, period.
All right, next one. You got one, Bill?
Sure, so first-time buyer programs, you know, or grant programs. And depending on where you live, obviously I know that we have an audience from all over the place. So look to see what kind of grant programs you have, first-time buyer programs. And now remember, in most cases, first-time buyer programs don't necessarily mean first-time buyer. Some do. Some say you can't own a property to qualify. Some say you just can't have purchased a property within 3 or 5 years to qualify for first-time buyer programs. So check your state, check your local, and see.
Like in Florida, we have a few, right?
Yeah, there's several in Florida.
Yeah, so I'm sure they have them across the...
Oh, absolutely, I have no doubt.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. So find out, do some searches, ask your realtor after you qualified them, and if they tell you, I have no idea what kind of programs are out there, you probably failed to do the interview. Yeah,
that's another good question. That's a good question for asking your realtor too. You know, it's not necessarily the ins and outs of it, but yes, there are certain programs. You know, we have homes, Live Local now is what it's called here in Florida. So there's different programs out there until they run out of money, and then they refund at the beginning of the year. You know, we used to have Hometown Heroes, and there's a lot of different programs.
So if you're in Florida and you ask your realtor, you know, for one of those programs, and they're like, I have no idea, get a new realtor. All right, let's go on to the next one. The next one basically is, okay, you got pre-approved, and we talked about your credit. Now that you're pre-approved and you know exactly what you could afford and what exactly your budget is, don't screw with your credit. Don't co-sign with anybody.
Right.
Don't go buy that car, like I said before. Don't buy that boat. Don't do anything.
Yeah, don't do anything. Here's, you know, this is where people get in trouble, really.
All right.
Not necessarily those big items. It's those little items. I'm going to put this on layaway. I'm getting a new house. There's furniture that's on sale because, like, we have Veterans Day coming up, right? Or a Labor Day holiday, or the Black Friday holidays. I'm going to buy this because it's a good deal. And don't worry, you don't have to pay for a year, but it's on your credit. So don't get yourself end up with that.
Yeah, they're going to see the inquiries, and they're going to be like,
well, they're going to see that you have debt coming.
Yeah, and then they're going to be like, oh, the ratio, you know?
Yeah.
Because don't forget, if rates go up, if you're right on the border of qualifying and rates go up, you may not qualify anymore. But say they do go up, but you still qualify, that's freaking wonderful.
Yeah.
But let's say you add some debt to it, okay?
This kills a lot of deals.
And it kills a lot. It's not like when I used to do mortgages, I saw it all the time. I used to call these people because we pulled their credit before, and I'd be like, what did you do? We're closing next week. Yeah, but they're not gonna look at my credit again. Yes, they will, especially the way
As tight as it is now, they're looking at it the day before. It's crazy. You just, if you got to wait that month and a half, whatever your time period for closing is, just don't do anything. Don't close bank accounts. Don't move stuff around without checking with your lender first. I just had a deal, same thing. They moved some money from one account to another, trying to make things easier, and it ended up making more paperwork, explaining where the money came from, even though it came from one account to another.
Listen, we're not mortgage professionals. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. But you know, this is our opinion. Just if you want to buy a house and you're serious, after you get pre-approved, don't do nothing. Go buy a pizza pie or something. You know, just freaking don't do anything until you find the house and you close on it, and then do whatever you want. And that I don't think you should do either. But whatever, you already own the house. All right, let's talk about the next one.
Okay.
What do you got, Bill?
All right. Your job. Think about and try not to change your job right before or during a transaction.
Didn't you have that situation?
I did.
They went to a better job, but it caused like
it was havoc. They did. The family got really good jobs, better than what they had and what they qualified on.
But they changed careers.
But they changed careers in the middle of a transaction, and it was nothing that they could do about it. There was no holding off. There was no waiting. It was one of those things that we just had to work through with the lender, putting all the pieces together and making a plan, really, because we knew it was coming. And it's hard to say no, but try not to. This one, we were able to pull it off by the skin of our teeth and get the deal done, but it did make things significantly more difficult. And really it could have, if they didn't have the additional income and some creativity on the lender side, it did change things significantly to the point where it was, we ended up delaying closing a little bit, and it did make it more difficult to qualify.
Yeah, but I'm gonna throw my caveat in. If you don't think your job is secure, don't buy a house.
Well, yeah, that's a whole different.
Yeah,
this was just an opportunity. This was
I know,
whole,
but in general, basically, in the process of thinking about buying a house, if you don't think your company's gonna be around, or you don't like your job, you're thinking about quitting, don't buy a house. That's the end of the story. You better have a real secure house, because the mortgage payments will come every month. All right, let's go on to the next one. Okay, I have one, and since I'm a home inspector, I can talk about this.
Perfect.
Get a home inspection. I can't tell you guys and girls how often I go into a home and people tell me, you're not gonna find nothing. This house is perfect. And then the buyer's all excited because they got all hyped up about this house. Mm-hmm. And then I go into the house and I find some major issues. It could be a recalled panel, it could be burnt wires, it could be a number of things. Too many things just to list here. And then they get deflated. So, in my opinion, I'll be straight out, if you skip an inspection, you're making a big mistake. And not just because I'm a home inspector.
No, I agree. It could save you a ton of money in the long run. Just because you find something, a deficiency, when you're doing your inspection, doesn't mean that the deal is dead. It's just something that we negotiate and we work through. Mm-hmm. As part of the deal sometimes. But I agree. You've got to have a home inspection. There's too many things that I've seen where we found something that we did not want to find. Yeah. And the homeowner just flat out didn't know about it.
It's honest mistakes.
Yeah, like they didn't know. And they were like, they holy smokes. I'm glad you found that.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know about it. So at least they were able to catch it and, work through the problem.
If you guys skip the home inspection, you're probably making the biggest mistake, because that $500 could save you tens of thousands of dollars. I'm not exaggerating. Give you a quick story. I told somebody to do a sewer scope, which basically, because there was a big oak tree in front of the house, that means when they put a camera down the sewer to make sure that the roots didn't grow into the sewer line. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to spend the $125 on top of that. Okay, 3-4 months later, they had backup. They had to call a plumber because everything was backing up. Yep, the tree roots went into the sewer lines. ended up costing them $45,000.
Yeah.
And they could have negotiated that at the closing or walk away from the house totally.
Right.
That's what I mean. You're making a big mistake.
Yep, and oak trees are everywhere here in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't beat it.
No, those hidden things that the seller doesn't even necessarily know about.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. These aren't things that people are trying to hide stuff. It's just sometimes the seller doesn't even know that the situation exists yet.
Just the other day, the guy says, oh, it's a condenser air conditioner. You know, we have two parts. One part was in the attic and the other part is outside, the condenser and the air handler. And the listing agent was there, and the listing agent say, this is a brand new air conditioner we just had installed 2023. People were like, yeah, it's great, it's brand new and all that stuff. I went up in the attic. The air handler was 20 years old. They changed the condenser outside, not the air handler.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. All right, let's bring this home.
All right. Last but not least, don't be too picky. So what do I mean by this? I don't mean by any stretch of the imagination that you shouldn't get the house that you want. I've been with buyers that want everything exactly the way they want it, to the point where we even went to build centers and they couldn't get what they wanted. So what I mean, just, there's gonna be some concessions. There's no such thing as a perfect house. If you built it, there's still no such thing as a perfect house in my opinion. There's gonna be things where, oh, well, the kitchen's great, as an example. I don't necessarily, oh, the living room's a few feet small. Maybe there's, you know, it doesn't have ensuite bathrooms, things of that nature. There's gonna be some concessions there, but just look at the house as an overall, or the apartment, or the condo, whatever you're purchasing. Just look at it as a whole, and does it fit your needs? But be happy with your choice. But
yeah,
don't let picky paralyze you. Especially
when you want, you know, 5 bedrooms, 3 bath, but you have $300,000, you know, in this market, you know, in this area, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, that's probably not going to happen. So just kind of go in with a clear picture of what exactly you want. A lot of times I get the standard, hey, Bill, we want to stay around $400,000.
Mm-hmm.
I want 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, and a big yard. I don't want to have to do anything to the house. I want it in a really, really good area, close to my work. That's right downtown.
Yeah.
So, large lot downtown is very difficult to find, and if you do find it, they're very expensive, more so than the $400,000 that you're looking to spend. So that's what I mean by now we could maybe find that property, excuse me, but you may have to drive 10 minutes, 15 minutes from the downtown corridor. So that's what I mean by being too picky, like you want these specific things, or you just have to come up with more money.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest advice. Just be open-minded, and remember, when you move into the house, it might not be painted the way you want it to be painted.
Yeah.
And you can paint it. So try not to let the seller's decorating taste, this is hard, I understand. The seller's decorating taste and color, you know, choices maybe deter you from a good property because you just don't want to paint. And I've had that happen, and we have these conversations with my customers. It's just paint.
Yeah.
You know, and don't expect the seller to paint the house for you. Not in the market that we're in. If it's a different market, then maybe that's something we can discuss. But that's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, that's today's video. Like always, greatly appreciate it. And we have the sun in our face.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But do me a favor, consider subscribing. It really helps out the channel, and it's greatly appreciated. We will talk to you in the next one. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thanks. See you on the next one.
Bye.